SCP-3114 begins tearing openings in the target's body and pulling out its bones. Once it has completely removed the target's skeleton, it will attempt to pull the remaining flesh over itself. SCP-3114 is an animate human skeleton. When it stands, it is approximately 1.6 meters tall and weighs 30 kilograms. Though it has no articulation or connective tissue, its individual bones remain in place as they would in the human body. Individual bones can be pulled out of the position, but quickly return to their correct position when there is no longer an outside force acting on them. Though SCP-3114 is made of similar minerals as human bone, it is much denser and stronger. It requires more than 3 times as much force to break them. A broken bone will mend, though it takes several weeks for a larger bone. The object class is Euclid. There is no current explanation for SCP-3114's ability to move. Its observed range of motion and its joints are similar to a healthy adult female's. It is much stronger than a human of comparable size. SCP-3114 is able to lift at least 250 kilograms with one arm and has a measured grip strength of 270 kilograms. Its maximum observed foot speed is 60 kilometers per hour. Therefore, it is held in a 3 meters by 7 meters enclosure surrounded by reinforced steel, with impact glass window for observation. SCP-3114's enclosure attached with a similar 1 meter by 2 meter cell. It is used to contain SCP-3114 when its enclosure needs to be entered for maintenance, enrichment, or inspection. It is able to react to visual stimuli, and it has an apparent field of view similar to a human's. However, it does not react to sound or smell. It responds to touch, but it is difficult to test its sensitivity. Found in a series of studies, SCP-3114 is extremely aggressive and immediately attempts to attack a human or other biological humanoid, referred to as targets from here on, anytime it sees them. When it sees a potential target, it will take the quickest, most direct route it can, and only avoiding obstacles it cannot push through. Once it reaches the target, it will latch on with its hands and begin squeezing around the target's throat. In the contact experiment of SCP-3114 and D-1724, which is a 120 kilogram adult male, D-1724 attempted to run when he saw SCP-3114 approach. When it caught him, he attempted to fight back, but was unable to do appreciable damage to it. However, this did agitate SCP-3114 a great deal, and damage to D-1724 was greater than in other observed cases. SCP-3114 gave up removing the subject's bones partway through when it became clear the subject's body was not intact. The remains were placed in a corner. It placed several sticks and a cardboard box on top of D-1724, as though burying him. In the experiment, the subject is a 55-kilogram female human cadaver who had been dead for 2 days. SCP-3114 reacted as it would to a live human, including an attempt to crush its throat for several minutes. Once the target has stopped moving, it begins tearing openings in the target's body and pulling out its bones over the course of several hours. Once it has completely removed the target's skeleton, it will attempt to pull the remaining flesh over itself. However, this move will tear the flesh into multiple parts. Once the body is no longer in one large piece, it loses interest in it. In an experiment, SCP-3114 contacted with a female gorilla. It approached the female gorilla but did not become aggressive until the subject stood up. It proceeded to engage in its typical behavior. However, the gorilla was able to break SCP-3114's left ulna before it was dead. It was unable to fit itself into the gorilla's body. When the body was no longer intact, it gave up. Female gorilla was buried in the corner, as with previous subjects. When SCP-3114 needs to be moved from one section to another, a projection of a human subject will be displayed on the wall in the desired area. Once it detects the projection, the door will be closed. If it is not a part of approved testing procedures, no personnel are to enter its enclosure. In another experiment, the subject is a 155-kilogram male human cadaver who had been died for 1 hour. SCP-3114 reacted like the female cadaver mentioned earlier. However, it was able to keep the body intact while it placed itself inside. It walked around its enclosure for an hour while wearing the subject. When a projection was shown to clear the enclosure, SCP-3114 did not attempt to attack the projection. Instead, it walked up to the projection and began to attempt interaction. D4843, an adult male, was placed in the enclosure. When SCP-3114 approached, he attempted to escape. SCP-3114 grabbed him but did so gently. It continued to try interacting with him, taking his hand and placing it on its face, trying to mimic his movements, and embracing him. D4843 reacted negatively to all interactions. After 3 hours, D4843 was removed from the enclosure. SCP-3114 waited for several minutes at the door. Then it tore the subject off of itself. It kicked the remaining into a corner, then lay down next to the subject of a teaching human skeleton. It did not move for 3 days. Then it resumed its normal behavior. In an experiment, the subject is a store mannequin, dressed as a Class D personnel. As expected, it ran to the subject. However, it stopped several feet away. It stared at it for several minutes, then waved a hand in front of the subject's face. It seemed confused by the lack of facial features of the subject. It proceeded to touch the top of the head, tapping it several times before it finally carried it back to its enclosure and placed it in the corner of enclosure. It mimicked its pose several times while standing next to it. It removed the mannequin's clothes and attempted to wear them. However, it was unable to operate the bell and could not keep the pants from falling. After several attempts, SCP-3114 appeared to grow frustrated. It removed the clothes, then threw them and the mimic into a corner. When no target is present, SCP-3114 is fairly docile. It explores its enclosure but does not attempt to escape. And SCP enrichment objects such as blocks, tires, cardboard boxes, and sticks are provided and replaced at regular intervals. When the lights are turned out for the night, it lay down and became motionless. Though it appears to be asleep, it is still capable of responding to visual stimuli. So that's the SCP-3114. What do you think of this SCP? Feel free to comment below.